So my roommates aren't here right now, which means the entirety of my impulse control is gone. And I have another friend who I'm trying to get to watch Hazbin Hotel with me. That's, you know, an implied plea, not a threat. Please watch this very silly show with me and have a good time. You know who you are. I'll be sending this to you. But anyway, I want to crash out about a few things about narrative structure in musicals because, I guess graduate school hasn't beaten that love out of me. Quick story time. I just got back from seeing the musical Crazy for You, which, if you don't know about, I didn't know about either until, people were throwing me in their car, taking me to the theater. Uh, and so if you've never gone to any sort of art event and talked about it afterwards with a group of graduate students, that's probably, for your own sanity. But I was talking to one of my friends, and my MO for seeing musicals is just like there's singing, there's dancing, two things I can't do. So, I'm very easily impressed. But he was kind of breaking down why exactly Crazy for You didn't quite hit for him as a musical. And it was it was like that, gang. It was like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have a completely new way to to shit on Disney. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about that in like three main ways. And since I'm also kind of crashing out a little bit about season 2 of Hazbin Hotel premiering, I'm gonna talk about uh, the problem with modern Disney villain songs, and why I think putting This Is the Thanks I Get in conjunction with Hazbin Hotel's new villain song from the V's can be productive, and teach us a few things about, I don't know, gang, about how, not to write songs that are shit. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's break it down. We'll get through this together. So there's hopefully gonna be structure to this video. And how I am going to accomplish that, we'll find out together. But mainly, I think we'll approach the problem of This Is the Thanks I Get, and maybe how, once we get up there, the V's song can shed some light on why exactly villain songs from Disney have been ruining my current adult self's childhood, right? So, so we'll see. But first off, from a structure standpoint, I should have notes. I've already forgotten my 3 points. But from a structure standpoint, um, musicals are, big art form, right? And I think for the average viewer, they're kind of just like plays with singing. And honestly, not wrong. Theater people don't come for me. Don't come for me with that statement. But you know, um, understanding kind of the distinctions between that and what the kind of different sub discipline or like sub genres within musical theater, and specifically their construction, right? I'm not talking about like rom-com musicals versus like horror musicals, right? I'm talking about specifically the actual structure of how the songs are integrated can help us think through some of these things, right? So my basic understanding, again, this is from being surrounded by theater people and not necessarily a theater person myself. So in generosity and good faith, I am providing this information, and definitely feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But musicals are typically maybe in three forms with their songs. I'm sure there's more, but these are the main ones I can think of off the top of my head. So there's sung through musicals, right? Very, very little dialogue and lots of songs, right? So this is kind of like your Les Mis, your Hamilton. If people are on stage singing constantly, that's what those are. My personal favorite, I don't come for people talking when I watch a musical, but to each their own, right? Then there's the kind of dialogue and uh, song musicals, right? I'm sure there's a name for them that I am blanking on, that I will put up for people to look at. Uh, but this is kind of like, you're Into the Woods, you're Wicked, right? There's a good mix. Oh, like, mm, I don't know if Hadestown would count for this. Probably Beetlejuice, right? But if there's a good mix of like spoken dialogue and singing, that's another kind of thing I am calling a genre of musical, right? A structural genre of musical, a style, I suppose. And then there are jukebox musicals, right? And jukebox musicals are interesting because the music itself isn't specifically written for the musical, right? It's taken and kind of assembled and put into the musical. And so these are things like, and Juliet, and other things that I'm sure exist. Um, but I'm only thinking of the animated children's film Sing now. So here's a whole list of other ones. uh, and so what got me thinking about like the distinctions between these actually and how that can teach us a little bit about songwriting and the state of like modern movie musicals and modern animated musicals is that like Crazy for You tended to be more towards uh this is jukebox musical style, right? Like the songs were all written by the same person, but they were pulled from kind of different projects, right? And that was the structural uh, issue, if it were, that my friend was commenting on. He was like, they're kind of breaking into song and it's not directly cohering with the narrative. And I want us to put a pin in that. Uh, Second, audience. Who are people singing to? I know this is like I asked that in kind of a facetious way, but also it's like from the terms Doyleist and Watsonian, right? Doyleist is from the author's perspective, so like or the audience's. So like duh, they're singing to the audience because it's a movie, it's a film, it's a TV show, right? It's a musical, we expect there to be singing. Okay, cool. I'm more interested in that from like a Watsonian perspective, like a character rooted perspective. Who are characters singing to in their songs? I think that's a really, really important thing for us to kind of remember from a construction standpoint, right? And then this third about like build, right? About the actual kind of ebb and flow of things. I think it'll just be easier to talk about and discuss when we're like actually watching one. But in essence, it's like, do we start somewhere and do we end somewhere different, right? Do we have a inextricably different understanding of the plot, the characters, the world than when we started? And I think those three elements can kind of really show us what's been lost, maybe, when we're looking at modern Disney, as evidenced in this one example that I'm pulling from Wish, which might be a straw man argument that I'm making out of them, but, um, I'm not making an argument like I ask my poor students in English 101 to do. So I can straw man this is the thanks I get because Disney deserves it, and it's kind of indicative of modern Disney, you know. So let's unpack. Let's jump into it, folks. Okay, so what I think we'll do is watch like the lead up to the first chorus in each song, then the chorus, then the next little bit that's either, you know, spoken or like the second verse, and then the chorus. And then both of these have like a, ooh, we're getting slightly darker and evil, like type little third verse, I suppose, and then the second chorus. So we'll just kind of flip-flop between these two examples. And I'm not sure if anyone would click on this video without knowing this is the thanks I get and or Hazbin Hotel. But brief just synopsis as I pull up this is the thanks I get. But so this is a quote unquote villain song from Disney's 100th anniversary film Wish. If you didn't see the movie, honestly, I would recommend seeing it just so you can be like, oh, thanks, Disney. You hate us as an audience, and I should stop giving you money if you need that wake up call. I'm not saying like it's the worst film ever made, but I'm saying that it was extremely disappointing to watch and made me feel like I would like my money and my time back. But it has spawned the interesting phenomenon of everyone being like, I wish this was better, here's how to make it better. And honestly, if collective creative engagement is like the product of creating some sort of art, maybe you've done something right. So I don't know, maybe maybe Disney popped off with this one. But in this film, this is the king, a little bit of context, since we're talking about these from like narrative building standpoint. This is the primary antagonist of the film, King Magnifico, Magnifico, yeah. And he is the king that, you know, is kind of hoarding the wishes of the common people that our protagonist Asha is trying to get back. And he's recently discovered that someone broke into the castle and is stealing and has stolen wishes or is trying to steal wishes. Or maybe he just knows that I've only watched this film once, you guys, but he's upset about, you know, her not doing something about the wishes. I should have done a better plot summary of that. But, you know, look it up on your own time, or maybe I'll put it up on the screen. So anyway, let's watch the first verse of this song.
How brazenly they question me.
They only question you because you make them feel safe enough to do so.
I'll be with the wishes. Disturb me with nothing but good news. I can't help it if mirrors love my face. It's genetics.
Okay, just gonna stop us here. Not for him being like, I'm the hottest man alive. Why is no one respecting that? But just for us to flag the idea of audience, right? So he's talking to his wife. He's like, she leaves, and then he breaks into song by himself. It's not necessarily a bad thing if characters are like singing to themselves in a musical, right? You know, I think that's kind of one of the implicit ways we can understand musicals is that characters break into song when they are kind of overwhelmed by an emotion that they have to be sharing, right? But I will note that for a villain song, there's usually like some witness, right? And I'm going to make this point and then immediately refute it with Hellfire. um, but normally villain songs, they play a little bit better if the antagonist is directly antagonizing something, right? So we can think about Friends on the Other Side. We can think about uh, oh goodness, what's Poor Unfortunate Souls, Be Prepared. These all have kind of a direct audience that the villain is playing off of, that can make them look a little bit more nefarious, right? Just through that outside perspective that we're getting of them. Hellfire, though, is the interesting counterpoint to this, and that, you know, uh, oh my goodness, what is his name? What is Bad Priest's name in The Hunchback of Notre Dame? Let me see. Google. It makes everyone smart. Oh, Frollo. That's right. That's right. Frollo, not Judge Frollo, not Frodo. I almost said Frodo, and that's not correct. Yeah, but so he is singing to himself, right? And I think that would be like a good uh comparison for what they're trying to do with This Is the Thanks I Get, right? It's the villain saying to themselves, they're kind of having this reflective moment that is then indicative of their kind of own behind closed doors persona, right? But with Judge Frollo, it's interesting that in that song, he's alone, but he is actually like making an appeal to someone. He's like singing to God. And so I just want us to kind of note that bit about audience. Not that I don't think you can make a compelling villain song without an in-world audience. But you've got to be very careful with what and how you're doing that, because if the character's singing to themselves, that's a particular set of narrative constraints that you would have to keep in mind. If the character's singing to someone else, that is also bringing with it a different set of constraints. And as we watch through this a little bit more, I think it's going to become evident, this mismatch of audience, right? Because it seems like King Magnifico here is singing both to himself but also to the people of Rosas, and it makes everything just a little bit confusing, right?
Yeah, I got these jeans from outer space. Keep the name, I'm magnificent. I put the I and I'm omnipotent. I'm passionate, I'm not petulant. Someone praise me for my benevolence. Just look.
Okay, I think I don't actually, for all I am deconstructing and ripping this apart, I don't actually hate the idea underneath this song, right? The idea of like an upbeat villain song, kind of fire, kind of bangs, right? As we'll see in Hazbin Hotel, because that's another, and one of the reasons I want to kind of put these two together is that that's a upbeat villain song, and this is too. And I think with kind of the character portrait that we get of King Magnifico, that makes a lot of sense, right? He obviously is not thinking he's a bad person, and he wants people to trust him, and also it's kind of revealing that he's like self-absorbed, full of himself, and he's kind of giving himself a pep talk, but also maybe introducing this more sinister concept that he's angry at the people that live in his kingdom. the problem with that is what exactly is King Magnifico's characterization? Because for like the first half of this movie, you watch this and it's like, well, Asha kind of looks like she kind of looks bad. She kind of looks like an asshole, like a bratty kid. At that, like the idea that she wants everyone to get a wish, that's crazy. And King Magnifico is like safeguarding the wishes, and like, yeah, maybe we can see how that's a bad thing, but also, uh, the plot isn't really making it clear. So when we get to this song, there's like a lot riding on it, right? Because we're kind of getting this interior look at King Magnifico. And is it hitting? Is it hitting, folks?
I'd give the clothes off Benito back if you really needed that. I'd be the first one to volunteer. Henry, if your home were to crumble or if you were in trouble, I'll let you live here for free.
Okay. The classic, I let you live here for free and I don't even charge you rent line. But also, I want to talk a little bit about kind of just the general imagery that's happening here. Is this intimidating? Are we scared? Like, I don't know. I mean, he's kind of in this silly, goofy phase, and this is where the idea of, I think, a Watsonian view of the audience really is coming into play. Is Magnifico singing this for himself? Like, does he believe what he's saying here? Does he believe that he's helping these people? Or is he going, ha ha ha, I've tricked them and look how benevolent they think I am? And it's really unclear from the song, right? The song's not giving us much to work with. And if you listen to the lyrics, like, if he lets them live here for free and doesn't even charge them rent, like, that's an objectively good thing, right? And so, regardless of if the lyrics are slapping or not, there's just a lot going on logically here that makes this song a bit confusing because we don't actually know what Magnifico's like intentions are. And one of the ways that's getting muddied is by not having an explicit indication of what the audience is, right? Is the audience himself? Is the audience the people of Rosas that he's singing to hypothetically? But even then, I don't think he would be saying this to those people, right? So yeah, just note that.
And I don't even charge you rent. I clean up all your messes, and I'm always there when you need to vent. I give and give and give and give.
Also, just not true, blatantly not true, right? Our main character, and this is another example of something that could be problematized and show that Magnifico is like lying here, right? Because Asha at the beginning, until she meets him, has never like seen or interacted with the king, right? So the idea that he's like always there and always giving, not true, right? And so you could have a villain song where he is being hypocritical, where he is kind of saying these things, and we're to go, oh, well, of course he's lying and being hypocritical here because he's the villain and he's trying to paint a better picture of himself. But given the musical cues here and given just how, like, this is brushed aside, it doesn't appear to be an instance where we're supposed to flag any of this, right? So we're 57 seconds into this song. And let's just think about kind of that third criteria of progression again, right? What do we know about Magnifico at the start of this song that has been challenged by the last minute, right? Not much, right? We have the idea that he's this benevolent king that's maybe evil when we start. And that's where we are at like the minute mark. Okay.
If you'd think they'd all be content. And all I really want is just a little respect. And this is
Okay. Good line actually before the chorus, right? Because I think that's another thing with the villain song, right? And the structure of it is that this is where we get the like villain monologue, right? It's the villain's I want song, right? We're to understand their motives and how they're going to kind of complicate the world for our protagonist. And so Magnifico here going, and this is the thanks I get, like, all he no, he says, all I want is a little respect. It's like, okay, that's given us something to work with, right? Because it's giving this idea of what his internal motivations might be, right? So for the first minute of this song, I would just say that a lot of it feels like filler, right? It just feels like filler. We don't have a clear understanding of Magnifico as a king, as a kind of antagonist to Asha's plot, right? We just kind of have this guy who is maybe hyping himself up. He's not really making explicit threats to people, right? But then maybe right before the chorus, we get the central idea of this song, right? He feels unrespected, unappreciated by his people. And that could be interesting if the rest of the song delivered. Okay, so switching tracks to the Hazbin Hotel song. This is from the first episode of season 2. This is going to be sung. Oh man, there's so much plot that happens in Hazbin Hotel. But basically, the idea is that the Princess of Hell is trying to rehabilitate sinners because hell is overpopulated and get them to be better people so they can go to heaven. And there's various antagonists that oppose her on her way because, Charlie Morningstar is perhaps the only decent person in hell or entity in hell. But since this is season 2, this is going to be, well, Hazbin Brainrot says that my theory here is that the V's are not going to be the primary antagonists of season 2. That's probably still going to be Lou. But that doesn't have much to do with how we're dissecting this. We can think of this as the kind of primary villain song for our villains of the season, the V's. And so the V's are a trio of sinners that are now like overlord rulers of certain dominions of hell. They run like a technology sector, a media sector, right? And a techocracy. Sam Altman. no, Vox is not that bad. But the ringleader of this group, his name is Vox, and he's going to be the primary singer of this song. And yeah, let's break it down.
We have the chance to be more than overlords. We have the chance to be gods. It's not what
Okay, same thing, just stopping it really fast at the actual like beginning of the song, because Vox is singing this to Velvet and Valentino, who are his like co-conspirators, right? And that kind of drastically changes our understanding of what this song does, right? They're both villain songs, right? But this is immediately grounding us in the context of what are these villains doing, right? Would be the basic thing. What's their evil plot together? But also, Vox is trying to convince Velvet and Valentino to go through with his plan, which is to, like, well, we don't actually know what his plan is, right? It's been a joke for the last, like, 2-3 minutes of the scene that they're not paying attention to what his plan is. But yeah, so that immediately gives us a different set of stakes and tensions entering this song, right? So not only is this a villain song, we've got the kind of undercurrent of, oh, is Vox going to be able to convince these people of what he's doing, right? So that gives us a different set of stakes, right? That will create tension throughout the song. We can also think about like Mother Knows Best maybe as another kind of example of this, maybe, where like she's trying to convince Rapunzel not to go outside, right? And while we're getting her primary motivations through this villain song, she's also in world having to also convince someone of her plan, right? So just, yes, slightly different stakes and tensions going into this song.
Heaven is, it's what it could be, with new management in charge, like you and you
Christian.
and me. Once we get up there and snag that angelic throne, our unholy trinity could make their realm our own.
Okay, boom. That's the plot. That's what he wants. And we get that very clear at the 33-second mark of this song. Vox's grand plan is that they're going to go up to heaven and they're going to become gods. It gives us a kind of clear end goal that he wants, and it gives us a direct conflict with the main protagonist, Charlie, who isn't wanting to perpetuate violence on heaven, right? Yes, so goals and stakes, I think, are the two things I want to kind of flag here if we were to use our like third criterion of like how the song is progressing, right? Because we don't know exactly what Magnifico wants, right? He says, all I want is a little respect. How exactly is he going to get respect from people? And so I think in some ways, like, Vox is a good comparison character of a villain to Magnifico in that they kind of have this outwardly benevolent, well, if that was the intention with Magnifico, right? They have this kind of outwardly benevolent persona that they project to people, but like behind closed doors, they're like power hungry and like, charismatic little slime balls, right? Okay.
We'll pack up all their piety and redecorate, that our tower would look powerful with pearlier gates. Once we get up there, up to the...
I'll stop this here because that's I've kind of watched some of the chorus of this one. Maybe we can just finish it out. But, we get the key change, which is always nice. But also, it's animation, right? We can be a little more fun with our visuals. So we've got Vox on the piano, and then boom, we're up here in heaven. And that's really kind of reinforcing to the audience that what he wants, what the goal is, right? But also, as we're going to see in a second, none of these visuals, as I was remarking earlier in This Is the Thanks I Get, none of those visuals are scary, right? And so at the beginning of Once We Get Up There, none of these visuals are that scary either, right? We've got the colored palettes of heaven, we've got him playing the piano, but I want us to kind of watch what happens next.
Promised land, 100 billion souls await our every command. We're the biggest fish in hell, how about we upgrade the bowl? It's time for growth, let's rule them both, take total control.
Okay, there. Vox does something a little scary, right? We've got him with his head in the bowl. We've got him going onto the TV. He's got this kind of like wide grin. So the visuals, the imagery are reinforcing that even though we're kind of upbeat, even though that we're peppy, even though that, Christian Borle doesn't really do a growl with Vox's voice until the word control, it's like there's a sense of foreboding. There's a sense of, these people are being a little dastardly, right? And even if you're not 100% listening to all of the lyrics, you could, if you were watching this in silence or in distraction, you would be like, oh, these aren't the good guys, right? Like, okay.
Think of all.
So that was to the end of the chorus on Once We Get Up There. And so I know that the songs in Hazbin Hotel would traditionally be like they're traditionally a little shorter than Disney film songs. But I just want us to consider that at the minute mark here, we've already gone through the full chorus, and we've already kind of established something different about Vox, right? We start the beginning of the song. We know that he's the kind of ringleader of the V's. We know that he is kind of power hungry and rules over parts of hell. Then we enter this song, and we're starting to get a slightly our static understanding of Vox as a character begins to shift as he sings this song, right? We're like, oh, not only does he want to rule in hell, he also wants to rule in heaven, right? And that's immediately giving us a kind of sense of urgency, a sense of stakes. And so, if you didn't listen to Once We Get Up There, this song is kind of integral for understanding the kind of plot beats that will come for the V's in subsequent episodes, I would hope, right? Even though they're not out yet. But and that's one of the things, linking back to how I was talking about earlier, the jukebox musicals, as opposed to kind of other musicals, right? Is this idea that the songs are like integral to the plot, right? They're not things that you can take out and remove and still understand what's going on, which I think, again, is a big issue with the songs in Wish and the songs in a lot of modern Disney movies. They're wanting to make kind of pop hits that can be kind of completely removed from context. And unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for the genre of musicals, but that's not how you make a musical. That's not how a musical can be constructed, right? Because then, as I was noting earlier, it kind of feels like filler, right? Also, this is a great kind of image that I paused on, but we can kind of see the internal stakes of Vox's story world audience, right? Like Val and Velvet here, they are maybe not buying what he's saying. And so not only are we progressing on a level of like plot and us understanding like what Vox's evil, nefarious goals are, but we are also getting a kind of characterization of him, right? And also characterization of Valentino and Velvet, right? Because this is our dastardly villain trio, right? But they're not 100% in lockstep, right? So there's a little bit of tension there as well. Okay, moving back to This Is the Thanks I Get. Let's watch the chorus here, right? And I think just too, we can also think about like length on this as well, because all of that is accomplished in the Hazbin Hotel song in under a minute, right? And we're about to enter our chorus here on the minute mark.
The thanks I get. This is the thanks I get.
here we cut to Asha and her little goat friend, while we get our little do 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 do's in the background, and just the repeated "This is the thanks I get." And there's not much that I can really there's not much that I can really say about these, right? Because it's not giving us much to work with. We can see that the chorus itself is rather lackluster, right? He's posing this rhetorical question of this is the thanks I get? Like, is this the thanks I get? And it's like, well, yeah, I suppose, but it's not really advancing us in the story or in our understanding of like Magnifico, right? So let's see.
This is the thanks I get. You're so brilliant.
Yeah, so Asha was in there trying to steal the wishes. He comes in, but then this is interesting because instead of us like breaking out of song, right, into something more spoken, to maybe kind of build the tension with, oh, is he going to catch Asha? We get him talking to himself again.
Oh, that's the least you could say. There's more, admit it. You're cute and strong and bold and brave. Thanks. See this kingdom, I built it up, and you still complain, ungrateful much. Are you sure that you're not the prop? I'd love to see you try and do my job. Oh, I granted 14 wishes.
Okay, all of that dialogue, unnecessary. We know he runs the kingdom. We know he's feeling underappreciated. We know he's vain. So we've spent another 42 seconds on music that is supposed to sound catchy, I suppose, but is, again, not doing anything for us narratively, which means this is failing critically. It's gotten a natural 1, guys. It's gotten a natural 1 on like being an efficient musical number, right? Also, are we feeling scared of Magnifico yet? Like, okay, let's go.
Last year, come on, that's a high percent. And now you're questioning your king. The disrespect I just underwent. You know I always got your back. Yeah, really though, it's no sweat. Since the day you...
Again, audience. He's pulling, and this is answering our idea of audience in a way that's even messier, right? In a way that doesn't advance us, because he's pulling down the wishes of these people who are, you know, his countrymen, I suppose, and he's justifying himself to them. And at this point, we've got to pick with the characterization of King Magnifico, right? Is he just like completely vapid and doesn't understand the discontentment of his subjects, which this seems to imply, or is he like master manipulator gaslighting? And the song is not letting us choose either option, right? And it needs to. We need to have that clarity as members of the real audience, right? So the kind of slipperiness of who he's singing to is really, really becoming detrimental at the second minute of this song.
You were born on the day that we met. And this is the thanks I get.
Chorus repeats. So we'll watch.
This is the thanks I get. And this is the thanks I get. And this is the thanks I get.
Okay, more. He goes for the spell book. Okay, he goes to the spell book, and then we start entering our like dark mode, dark villain mode. Okay. Let's go back to once we get up there.
All your dreams that could come true.
Even the wet ones.
Yeah, those two. Imagine what it could enable.
For my label.
Yes, a heavenly host that bows to none but us.
I can have
Okay. Despite the fact that it's just plain fun that Vox is able to be evil with other characters, this is also doing something efficiently in terms of plot and characterization and world building, right? It's reintroducing the idea of like the heavenly host and the exorcists to the audience. It's getting Val and Velvet on board with Vox's plans, but for different reasons, right? Let's
new angels.
Tear off their wings and make them dresses.
there we go. So like, you know, Val is being his typical NC-17 self, and wants the angels for, you know, sexual reasons. Velvet wants them for her brand, and so even though the V's are coming together in like this idea of them conquering heaven, we've still also got that tension of like they're not necessarily doing it for the same reasons, right? But also it gives us a kind of narrative payoff and narrative satisfaction, right? Like Vox, one of his character traits is that, you know, he's charismatic, he's persuasive. So that's being reinforced to the audience in real time as we kind of see him convince Velvet and Valentino to kind of get on board with his plan, right? And also, we've started just having straight up villainous imagery, right? Even though our color palette, well, even though over here our color palettes are still in kind of the techie, you know, blues and kind of reds of hell, we get these like holographic, like angels bowing. We get the how they're planning to brutalize the angels. So you know, we're in scary territory, right? And so that's giving us something to work with in this song, right? Regardless of if you think it's a bop, it's hitting kind of metrics of, you know, character progression, world building, and plot stakes, right? Okay. We'll listen through it.
And make them dresses.
And what's best is
That dumb princess showed us the way.
There we go. We get a direct referral to our protagonist, which can always be helpful in situating the villain, right? We can kind of see how they are going to be a narrative obstacle to our main character, Charlie. And, you know, that's something we're not getting with the Wish song, right? Asha, funnily enough, Asha is in the room with Magnifico, but if you weren't visually seeing that, you would have no idea just listening to him that he is in any way concerned about her, right?
to make those haloed cabronas pay.
And once we're gods, I can't wait to say to everyone.
Okay. And that takes us to the kind of the dark intro of what the Hazbin Hotel song is going to do. But also, just in a much shorter time, it does its kind of second verse. But in contrast to This Is the Thanks I Get, which second verse is Magnifico restating what he does for the kingdom and also having another moment where he kind of hypes himself up and restates his vanity, we get something completely different here with the V's, right? Number one, they all get to sing, right? And explicitly kind of spell out their motivations. We get a kind of, I suppose it's not a dance number, but we do get some like character interaction between, you know, Vox and Val, which, you know, if you're not following the show 100% closely, you might be like, oh, there's something going on there, you know, if you're not going frame by frame and have seen them with their tongues in each other's mouths, right? And then I think it's also doing important characterization for Velvet, who is kind of the girl member of the V's, who does get her kind of own song in season 1, but has kind of been playing second fiddle to the boys in terms of evilness a lot of the time, right? And so here we, you know, definitely get to see her kind of emerge in her own way into kind of violence, right? So again, the second verse of this song, once we get up there, is doing a completely different thing than the first verse, right? So it feels like nothing can be removed. And so we're moving at like a breakneck speed that is still needing to all be digested, and you need to kind of integrate it into your understanding of the story. Okay, let's finish out. This is the thanks I get, and then we'll finish out once we get up there.
Do this. I swore I'd never do this, but I'm hypnotized by how these pages flip because I refuse.
So this is in our dark section of the show, dark section of the song, rather. And so the beat kind of stops being as like kind of light and happy. We get these dark strings. I actually think the instrumentals here are quite good. But my problem is kind of where this is leading us, and the actual like kind of lyricism and dialogue we're getting from Magnifico here, right? And, you know, Chris Pine is doing his best, right? But again, he's unfortunately not getting a lot to work with, right? Because what exactly is Magnifico doing here, right? We've maybe been introduced to like the dangers of dark magic in the spell book, but we have no sense of kind of stakes or what it's going to cost him to use this magic. Is this the spell book corrupting him? Like, because then that's, you know, that's a tragedy, right? If this is kind of a good guy and he's turning to this book, or is it a moment of like hubris where he's like, well, I've got to demonstrate my power over the people, right? Because he says, I didn't want to do this.
Damn, my power stripped. A potion, a spell, a summon, a curse.
Yeah, he says, I didn't want to do this, but I'm hypnotized by how these pages flip. And then he starts listing the ways that this could help him, right? And so again, we're being damned by a lack of clarity, right? Because there's just no way in this song to glean what exactly Magnifico's end goal besides staying in power is, right? We don't understand the steps it's going to take to do that. And also, we don't exactly know his explicit motivation for practically anything, right? If anything, actually, our understanding of Magnifico at the, you know, the 2:30 mark in this song is more unclear than when we started, right? Because is he the benevolent king that's being blindsided, like that is, you know, thinking he's doing what's best for the people and unfortunate victim of circumstance? Or is he the great mastermind that is, you know, villain number one and keeping his people in a tyrannical state? We don't know. And this song is making that even less clear, right?
Anything to make that light reverse. To this book, I don't want to be tethered, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Where was I? Oh, yeah. There's a traitor in this.
Okay, then we are back to the kind of light and peppy. We leave the dark verse. We return to another verse that is going to lead into the chorus again. The problem with this is it's kind of played as a joke a little bit, right? He like shakes himself out. He's like, oh, where was I? We've got a clash here, again, with the audience, right? From a Watsonian perspective, it doesn't really make that much sense. Is Magnifico like shaking himself out of the state? And he's like, oh, time to return to my nice demeanor. But why would he have to do that? He's alone. So then that's snapping the audience out of their generosity, right? To hold space for disbelief, right? They're not going to give the benefit of the doubt to this, right? And so Magnifico here, it's making things confusing for us. Right? It's making things so confusing that I completely dropped my point, right? In that, because he is singing to no audience, he would not have to leave him being in his green possessed squirrel wave, right? So therefore, it's breaking the suspension of disbelief, because the only reason we would understand him to be doing this is because it's a song and he has to like kind of finish out again, right? So honestly, I think if the song just ended there, it potentially would be better, right? Because then we get this strange return to form, so we can fit another chorus in.
Down and still I remain unbent. Come out now, explain yourself. I'm sure it's all just an accident. Well, whoever finds them first now, that's a wish well spent. Honestly, keeping you safe should be worth every cent. And this is the thanks I get. This is the
Okay. Yeah, so the imagery does start to match. It gets a little bit darker, right? I should have said that when we started our dark verse. Again, it's not necessarily the scariest, right? Magnifico is just kind of walking around. And we don't get many perspective changes, right? I think that's one of the very fun things about Disney villain songs typically, is that we've got a lot of different camera angles and we play with the, you know, anatomical constraints, right? We're not constrained by realism when we're drawing perspective in animation, right? So this is, you know, Magnifico kind of spelling out his plan, but again, it's not clear, right? Again, it's not giving us much to work with to understand his motivations, because he's going to give a wish to catch the traitors, the quote unquote traitors, right? So I suppose we could infer that, you know, this is him succumbing to some darker impulse or exploitation, because at first he was granting wishes more benevolently, right? So is he sliding into evil? Or has he always kind of held wishes over people's heads as a means of control? So again, we, even in his explicit statement of catching the traitors and not like giving up with the kind of clunky word unbent, right? Unbent, unbowed, unbroken. Sorry, Song of Ice and Fire people. We're never getting Winds of Winter. But that aside, it's not revealing anything to us, right? It's not like the Song with the V's, where we get the explicit statement from Vox that they're gonna go to heaven and they're gonna put their tower there because it'll look sick. You know what I mean? And so the character motivations are completely all over the place. So on top of the lyricism being messy, and on top of the visuals not being the most engaging to look at, we're actually becoming confused narratively. Um, on a structural level, this song is doing more harm than literally not having it at all, right?
Things I get. This is the things I get.
Picking the kind of people around.
This is the things I get. This is the things I get.
We've got him kind of scary, him at the end with the refracted images. Okay, so I think I've done a very, I felt like I was being generous when I was interacting with this song, but legitimately, hopefully, as I've kind of been breaking this down and talking us through, we can start to see how Disney is kind of writing this song as something that could be pulled out and like streamed out of context, right? And like no shade to the writers and the lyricists of this song, because to my understanding they were working under like extreme time constraints and not having seen the script, which is an insane thing to put upon your writers of a musical, but also is kind of proving my point, right? In that the actual medium of the musical cannot be written and cannot be successful without your songwriters understanding your plot and understanding the characterization of the various characters that populate your story world, because then things will not make sense. They will not only be like bloated and kind of fillery as we see at the beginning of this song, but also you're going to kind of gut your stakes and your tension and also make things more confusing for the audience if you don't have songs that are building off of and reflecting the actual kind of like spoken dialogue of your story, right? And so we can see here, how Disney trying to treat its musicals as almost like jukebox musicals, right? Um, is failing, right? Because Disney has kind of built their brand on musicals. And even though the songs are still being sung, and they're hitting kind of all the iconography markers, they've almost kind of switched the type of musical that they write. They're trending more towards this idea of the jukebox musical, of the hit, of the kind of extractable song, which just fundamentally doesn't work on a storytelling level when you're trying to tell stories like this, right? Where people are expecting the music to kind of carry the plot. And this isn't any like kind of shade or attack on the genre of the jukebox musical, right? There's some that are very, very good that I enjoy, right? But they are kind of accomplishing different things, right? They're having a different set of expectations that the audience kind of comes in with when you see a jukebox musical. And a lot of the times you're expecting the kind of spoken elements of a jukebox musical to kind of carry the plot a little bit more, and the songs are songs that typically people already know, that they can kind of have a fun time like jamming out to. Or on the reverse, there's a lot of jukebox musicals on Broadway that are like kind of a specific audience, right? Like there's a Cher musical and whatnot, and so then people are coming for the songs that they already love, and there's kind of very little plot. So those are how you're doing jukebox musicals. And what Disney seems to not being, seems to, one of the many, 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 many reasons for modern Disney musicals not doing so hot and not kind of satisfying the audience is this kind of turn away from the integralness of the songs to advance plot, to advance characterization, to advance the stakes and world building of your kind of project, of your story world. Okay, should we finish it out with Once We Get Up There? Let's do it.
You doubted me, your doubting days are done. You'll be cornered, trapped, and tortured, then I'll end you just for fun. Once we get...
Okay, just a little note about Vox's verse there. You know, again, we've got the scary imagery, but I want us to kind of maybe note also that Vox's motivations are very, very similar to Magnifico's, right? He says, to everyone who doubted me, right? So he's operating under a similar motivating factor of wanting respect, of wanting prestige. So are these two characters that necessarily are just being driven by like a cookie cutter cardboard cutout lust for power? Not exactly, right? So that's making them like slightly more interesting characters, right? And so we can see with Vox how this idea of kind of being somewhat insecure, of wanting you know, prestige and power and respect is like a very, very good basis for a villain, right? And could have easily been done with Magnifico, right? And also, we'll note here that Vox's return to form out of his like dark verse here is that, you know, Velvet and Valentino are watching him. So he can't, you know, be spending way too long on having this kind of very intense breakdown where he's like, I'm going to fucking murder these people, right? So just again, kind of having this logic to why characters are doing things in songs.
Get out there, the shining kingdom of God. No more petty squabbles with the dead as we stroll the golden promenade. What's an overlord to a deity? They ain't got a prayer.
It'll be so nice in paradise.
With a splash of ice, they'll pay the price.
They'll rule the sky from up on high. Once
And I
get up there.
Okay, so that's closing out our once we get up there. Two other things to note, I suppose, is that, you know, we end on a Disney reference with this shot, right? It's Be Prepared. It's also Once We Get Up There and Be Prepared are, you know, in rhyming conjunction with one another. And also, you know, kind of the image of looking up at the tower with, you know, Scar's position in the hyenas. And then what else do I want to note? You know, we kind of get the ensemble, we get the all of the three of them singing in tandem. And then we also get a slight lyric change, right? We go from Once We Get Up There to Once I Get Up There, right? And so they're all singing it together. And again, you know, threading through not only Vox's identity as our villain, but the V's as our villain, and maybe, you know, the interpersonal dynamics that are running throughout all of them. So just, I suppose, in conclusion, Disney, do better. Disney, we know you can do it, but also less facetiously, let's say. I think Once We Get Up There gives us a good understanding of how a song like This Is the Thanks I Get could work really, really well, right? The idea of an upbeat villain song, of a kind of antagonist driven by this desire for respect from people, maybe from a little bit of internal insecurity that's like kind of manifesting as, an extreme vanity, right? I see a lot of similarities between the kind of villain builds of Magnifico and in Vox, right? But so we can just see though how the conceptualization of how songs are kind of being treated and written is differing with both of these productions, right? Because we see how the songs are kind of being turned out as a kind of facet of the movie instead of a predominant function with the Wish soundtrack. Whereas, with the Hazbin Hotel soundtrack, I was seeing that, especially in the second season, like the writer's room was heavily involved with like the actual musical writing as well. And so that would be my takeaway for like point one. My takeaway for point two about the audience is just that make it clear. And this is a great bit of writing tip for anyone that does any sort of dialogue writing in general, right? Who is your character addressing? If they're addressing themselves, they're typically not going to be, lying to themselves. And right. So when you're flag that, I'll come back because sometimes characters do lie to themselves. Yes, we have unreliable narrators or narrators that are just lying bastards. But making sure you understand who your character's audience is going to change how they are speaking, how they are presenting themselves, right? So Magnifico, it seems like his audience is himself, but then why would he continually be justifying himself and continually be kind of hyping himself up in this vain way when it seems like he's not that insecure, right? So does he just want praise in a vain way? I don't know. So that's kind of messy, right? And with the V's we get it much clearer, right? Vox is singing to his co-conspirators, right? And then they're just all kind of at the end, they're kind of singing to each other in a hype-esque way, but also there's the implicit, kind of attack upon heaven, right? And to quote from Vox, right, like to everyone who doubted him, right? So we get a much clearer audience, and that's giving us a clearer sense to like kind of ground how we're to interpret this song. Circling back to the idea of characters lying, yeah. No, hold on. I might cut that. There's a way to pull off, characters kind of lying to themselves in songs, right? I'm maybe blanking on a good example right now, but it can be done. But I think in a villain song, we're needing a bit more clarity, if that makes sense. Like if you're going to set up the characterization of your villain that they are kind of self-deluding rather than kind of deluding the public, that needs to be kind of seeded before you would do it in a song, right? Because the function of these villain songs in a lot of cases, right, would be to kind of present how they are going to pose like a challenge to the protagonist and also make kind of more transparent their motivations. So yeah, do you guys have maybe hit me with comments of good self-deluding villain songs. Maybe the one Kill the Beast that Gaston sings. Um, but even then, he's not like he really does think he's like the greatest. Uh, he really does think he should lead these people to like kill the beast. And then just on the third point, I don't think I need to harp on it too much, but just at the end of the song with the V's, we have a much clearer understanding of all of them as individuals and what they're going to do and their role in the greater schema of the plot. At the end of this is the things I get. I don't know what we've gained. A new appreciation for how Disney used to construct their old villain songs, I suppose. Okay, I'm sure this video has run way too long. Thanks for bearing with me. If you watched what I'm sure has descended into madness and a rant. Um, but yeah, I needed to get all of that off my chest because I had like an epiphany. Shout out to my wonderful friends that took me to this musical because I was like, oh, narrative construction of musical songs. Maybe that's what Disney has forgotten. Okay. Bye.